1013 here on FM 1017, 1320 KLWN Dependent. I promised you I'd have Tony Rubo here from Briggs Subaru in Topeka, talk a little cars again. I don't know if you were listening during the last half hour. We were talking a little bit about the car shortage, the new car shortage, due to a lack of CPU chips. And also the fact that, you know, it's funny, it's amazing the things nowadays that have CPU chips in them that never used to, that, you know, for people who are homeowners, and my dad's an engineer, so he used to try and fix everything that was in our house and so on. And back in the days, you know, that we're talking about 50 years ago, it was not that hard to fix a washer dryer because there wasn't a whole lot in there, or a refrigerator, or, you know, or even a car. And nowadays it's, I mean, there's just so much computer technology in that. Now, my dad happens to be a computer engineer, so that doesn't hurt. But even, you know, even when you are, you have to have the diagnostic tools available and all that other stuff. It's so much more difficult to actually fix the things that are yours compared to what it used to be anyway.
Oh, yeah. The other day I was at a friend's house and went to go get a drink out of the refrigerator, and the basketball game was on his refrigerator. So I'm like, wow. I mean, he's got a TV and a refrigerator.
Yeah, they do now. And like that's one of the reasons why we have this chip shortage, is because so many things that never used to have computer chips in them do. And so they're, you know, because people hear, well, there's a huge shortage issue in cars because there's a lack of chips. They think they're, you know, car chips, you know, that like Doritos came out with the car version.
No.
And they, I mean, they are to the perspective of that cars use them, but they're just processor chips like there are in so many. I mean, our phones have them, our tablets, our computers, but also our refrigerators, our washer dryers. And in fact, the other thing too is that, you know, you go back 40 years and cars did have computers in them then. They used to call them things like ECMs or PCI, you know, and like control modules or whatever. But for all intents and purposes, they were computers. Now, cars sometimes, they're not just necessarily limited to one processing unit that's in there. You might have a you know, something that deals with the car's engine, and another chip that might be dealing with the car's navigation system or radio, another one that might be helping with the climate system, and so on and so forth. So when we say there's a shortage, it's partially because cars are more demanding than they used to be, but also partially because everything else is. And so last week you had either 3 or 4 new cars in at Briggs Subaru in Topeka. Where are you now?
I have 3 different new cars.
Okay.
On my lot
I guess that's
now.
good.
Basically what we're doing is we're selling inbound cars, you know, cars that are built, that are coming in July or August. People are buying those cars.
So like ordered cars.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little, you know, those cars have been allocated to me, so you're a little bit ahead of ordering one. Ordering one's like 8 to 12 weeks. These cars have already been assigned to me with equipment and everything, and you can buy them, and they're going to arrive a little sooner than ordering one.
So it's not a, you know, pick and choose your options or whatever. These are cars that are already in the process of being built. You just haven't gotten them yet.
Yeah. I mean, even when you're ordering a car, now, today, they build cars in packages, so it's not like you want to take one out of this one and that one. They don't really build them that way anymore. You buy package A, B, or C.
Okay. Yeah, like, you know, like option package. They do. Yeah. Almost kind of reminds you of the old days of subdivisions. You know, remember when they used to build the subdivisions and you were looking for a house, but you could only pick from like 3 floor plans, or something like that. It's kind of the same idea.
Yes, the home model.
So where does that leave people in terms of if you only have so many cars allocated to you, and like you said, we're talking about less than half a dozen in a typical month. You know, people, I would assume, if you're in a situation where you might want a car or need a car, you're kind of limited to the used variety.
You are. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of used cars. I mean, depending on where you go. So fortunately, I work for a company that's pretty big, and, you know, we probably have 700 used cars available. Cars, you know, in the $10,000 range, and cars in the $50,000 range. So you can go to BriggsAuto.com and you can look at the selection throughout Manhattan and Topeka.
So when you say 700 cars, you don't mean there's 700 on the lot at Briggs Subaru.
Used cars, yes.
Are there?
Well, not at Briggs Subaru, no. But I have access to any of those cars.
That's what I was going to say.
If it's convenient for you, which we want to tell you it is, come to Briggs Subaru and see me, and then I can arrange to have, say, hey, I want to, Briggs Nissan has this, car that I really like. And, we can arrange to have it brought over to Topeka, and you can do your transaction right there.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is that's become almost the norm at this point for people that are car shopping, is they don't, it used to, in the old days, obviously, you got in whatever you had, a car, bus, or whatever you needed to, get yourself to the dealer, and then just start walking around looking and seeing what they might have on the lot. These days, most people go online first and see, what might be out there, what they might like, or what models are appealing to them, and then make the trip out to the dealer.
Yeah, the research says that the average car buyer spends 14 hours online before their next move. Before they come and see me, they've already invested 14 hours searching for cars.
That's actually a good thing for you guys as well, because it keeps the looky-loos from wasting an awful lot of time.
Yeah, the car buying process is easier now. There's a couple different reasons why. One, what we just talked about, the accessibility of being able to, this is the car I want. Two, you have to consider what's changed in the pricing of used cars. Okay, so when you look at the old days when we, wore plaid jackets and smoked cigars, we marked the cars up whatever the heck we wanted to mark them up, and then we negotiated till you felt like you got a good deal, and then you took the car home and we made money.
Right.
Well, that's out the window, because what's happened now is if page one, if you think about the research you do online for anything, page one is the key. No one goes to page two to see if there's a better deal, okay? You're always searching on page one. So if you're not in the top 4 or 5 on page one...
You're talking about in a search.
In a search, yeah. So mileage-wise and price-wise, competitively, you need to be in the top 5 to get that phone call.
Right, because they don't come out to your dealer until they've already got something in mind.
Yeah, but they already know the price.
Right.
They already know the miles. So the margins are slimmer now for us as the dealer, because if you're not priced competitively online, they're not coming. They're not going to page two to see if there's a better deal.
Right. Plus, there's a lot more information out there than ever used to be. Most people didn't have their own Kelley Blue Book, sitting around their house so that they could look at every used car and see, what the Blue Book value is. Now you can do that very simply online. So most people that are coming to you are already armed with, I know around what this car is worth, so you can't just mark it up a ton and just hope for the best, because like you said, they'll never come to you in the first place if you got the what do you call it, soap on the windshield version of it.
They're not coming.
Yeah.
They're just not coming. If you're not priced competitively on the internet, your business is going to fail.
And so the good news is, like you said, when you go to a group like a Briggs or any kind of a large conglomeration of dealers, that all, because nowadays, obviously it used to be that if you were just looking for a new car, Briggs could have Briggs, Nissan, and whatever. But if you were looking for a Subaru, you went to Briggs Subaru. If you're looking for a used car, it could be anywhere, because any of these models, any of these makes can be, Briggs Nissan could have a Toyota there or whatever. And so if you look online, like you said, and kind of narrow it down to what you're looking for, before they ever come out to you, they could probably give you a call and say, look, you have this car on the lot that I'm interested in, but I'm also interested in this one that's over, at one of the other Briggs groups. You could arrange to have it out there, and they could actually see both of them at the same time.
Absolutely. It's funny because sometimes, like last night, a customer asked, which I understand, what kind of discount do I get on this used car? And I said, right now, we do a courtesy discount for any first responders, nurses, medical people, firefighters, police officers. We do a $200 discount to any of those immediately.
That's great.
And he just kind of stared at me for a minute, and he was like, oh. And I said, well, you came in because of the price, right? And he said, yeah. I said, okay, well, are you a first responder or a police officer? I can help you with another $200. So, he understood it.
Sure.
From that point.
Well, like you said, it's the nature of the current situation with regard to the market in used cars that there is, such a desire, such a demand out there that people can expect to get more from the cars that they have, but they also are going to expect to pay more for the cars that are on the lots.
Yeah, we talked a lot about this, Joel, and I've talked about this with friends, family. You're paying the middle, okay? Whatever the market is, that's the thing the consumer has to understand. When you have a trade-in, you're paying the middle. If the market's high, you're paying too much for the new car. but you're also getting too much for your car. So you're back to the middle. If the market drops and hits the bottom, we got hundreds of new cars on the lot and the market dumps, okay, then you can buy that new car at a low price, but the market's going to be reflective of your trade-in as a low price as well. Again, you're still paying the middle. So it's never really a bad time to buy a car. You're protected in the market both ways. And it's really important that the customer understands that.
Yeah. The only real consideration for market forces is if you happen to be in some sort of a position where your car buying purchase is very temporary. Like if you're only planning on keeping the car for 6 months or for a year or something, you might make a different decision from someone who is going to keep it for even 2 or 3 years, or if you're someone who, like me, keeps a car for 15 years, there's slight differences in that to look at what the current situation is and see, well, you know what, I might be better off buying now, or I might be better off waiting 6 months and buying then. And that was one of the things I was going to ask you about too, because I talked about this last half hour, that where we are right now would seem to be a temporary situation because it's not coming from a systemic problem. It's coming from a specific shortage that hopefully one day will, not be a shortage anymore. Where do you see this in terms of that timeline, though?
I thought it was going to be shorter, but I'm not so convinced. When Subaru talks about each year, like August, most plants shut down because they're retooling for the new model year.
Right. New cars for the next year usually come out in September, October?
Yeah. So they got different gadgets. So they're going to retool to build those cars. And they take vacations and stuff during that when they shut the plant down. And so Subaru's still going forward with that plan, which I understand. You better take care of your employees during this stuff right now.
Sure. Yeah. Because they can find new jobs really
easily. They can find new jobs, yes. I think it's going to be a little longer than I thought. So, and then from my side of it is towards the end of the year, I don't know how much market's going to be left for consumers from my side, because we're pulling a lot of people into the market now because a lot of people, they want to spend money. They want to get out and they want to spend money. Some of those people might have been my August customers that are buying now. So I don't know what it's going to look like in August.
It's really weird because, we're thinking that we're probably thinking more likely it's going to be late fall before we see more of a normality. But even in that scenario, it's hard to say because, like, for example, we talked about the idea that, new models usually come out in September, October. A lot of people like to wait for that time and then buy last year model cars, where they can get a discount. You're not going to have any. There's
going to be zero.
Yeah. So that you can't go that route, and not everybody's going to want to buy a new car at that time. Some of them may say, well, okay, well, I'll wait 6 months and buy this year's model as next year's model is coming out. But more than likely, that's not going to happen. They'll either just bite the bullet and buy a new car for this year, or we'll still see that increase in demand for used cars.
Yes. I was in the dentist chair this morning, and the young lady said, Tony, what's going on with used cars? Why are they so expensive? We went to go buy a truck, and gosh, it was really high. I said, well, I explained to her why, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, the crazy thing is we have a car that, gosh, we didn't think was worth very much. They gave us a whole bunch more than that car was worth. And I'm thinking, you just answered your own question. You're paying the middle, but customers are so focused on the one they're buying as opposed to the one they're trading,
right,
that they lose sight of it's a transaction price and it's a package. It's just not, I paid too much for this one. It worked together as a package. And when I explained it to her that way, she's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right.
In a normal situation, usually the sort of process people go through is they find the car they want, they deal with a price or whatever, and then they deal with their trade-in situation. Do people nowadays even say, let's deal with our trade-in first, and then I'll have a better idea of what I can afford for the car that I'm buying?
In some cases, yes. It's probably the minority for sure. In some cases, yes. Especially in my store, because to be honest with you, the average credit score in my store is about 800.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So a lot of them are, when I say we have 0%, they look at me like, why would I need that?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, because it's free money, but we don't deal with a lot of that, but we're happy to do it if that's the way you want to do it.
Well, and so the scenario we were in, we talked about this a little bit off the air, the best case scenario for someone right now is if you have extra cars. If you have a car that you don't need, go in and sell it. Briggs will buy it from you.
That's right.
And this is the market is as inflated as they've been for years for these kinds of cars.
It is.
Now, on the other hand, for someone who doesn't have a trade, is there anything they can do to kind of mitigate the situation?
just do their best.
Yeah.
Try to find the best car for the best price,
Yeah.
like you would normally do. And keep in mind, you can go to any Briggs location and sell your car. So if you're in Junction City and you want to sell your car, you can go into our locations in Manhattan. They'd be happy to give you an offer on your car. You don't have to come all the way to Briggs Subaru.
That sounds great, and it's a good time to do it. Tony Rubo, Briggs Subaru of Topeka, our guest, and always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Joel.